I never thought it would happen to me. At least, not like this. I always believed in the strength of my relationship with Amanda. After all, we had been married for nearly 8 years, a solid foundation with no major issues to speak of. But sometimes even the most well-built walls can crumble without you even realizing it. And that's what happened to us. It wasn't one glaring moment that set everything into motion, but a series of small changes, things I initially brushed off as harmless, signs that I chose not to see for too long. The first thing that caught my attention was how late Amanda started coming home. It was subtle at first. She would leave for work early, and occasionally she would stay late at the office to finish up a project or meet a colleague for a drink after work. That wasn't unusual. But then it started happening more often. She would get home later and later, sometimes well past 8 p.m., which was abnormal for her. In the beginning, I chalked it up to deadlines, meetings, or the occasional happy hour. After all, she'd earned the time to unwind, right? But as the weeks went by, I started to feel an uneasy knot in my stomach. Her stories became less detailed, more generic. When I asked her how her day had gone, she'd give me a smile and say, same old, which was not her usual way of speaking. Amanda had always been the kind of person who loved to share the highlights of her day, no matter how trivial they were. But now she had become more distant, her words more clipped. One evening, as she was walking through the door, a wave of unfamiliar perfume hit me. It wasn't hers. Amanda had always worn the same fragrance, light, floral, subtle. But this was something different, something strong and musky, a scent that lingered in the air like a bad omen. I didn't say anything at first. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just a new body spray or something she had picked up at the store. But deep down, the thought gnawed at me. Why had I never smelled it before? Why was I so unsettled by something as trivial as a scent? The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and half-hearted conversations. I could see that she was getting more preoccupied with work, but something in me still didn't sit right. It wasn't just the late hours, it was the way she seemed distracted. She used to come home and tell me everything, from the funny things her coworkers said to the latest office gossip. Now, there was an air of secrecy about her. She would answer questions with vague, nonchalant responses. If I asked her what she'd been up to, she would give me one of those generic answers, nothing special, just work. She'd dismiss me with a quick peck on the cheek, like she was trying to escape a conversation she didn't want to have. The turning point came one evening when she told me she was going out with some of her colleagues. It wasn't the first time she'd done this, but something about her tone that night felt off. There was a hesitation in her voice, like she was trying to convince herself that it was okay to go. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when she left the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The clock ticked on as I sat in the living room, aimlessly scrolling through my phone. I tried to watch TV, but my mind kept wandering back to Amanda. What was she doing? Who was she with? Why couldn't I shake the feeling that something wasn't right? It was as if I could feel the distance between us growing with every second. Around midnight, I finally sent her a text asking if everything was okay. I wasn't being overly clingy, just making sure she was all right. It was a simple text, "Hey, how's it going? Hope you're having fun." The response came back almost immediately. "Yeah, we're just having so much fun. I'll be back soon. Love you." Something about it didn't feel like her. The message was too polished, too perfect, like it was written for reassurance. Normally, she would have sent something casual, a typo here or there, maybe an emoji. But this message felt scripted, like she was trying to cover up something. I decided to wait a bit longer before calling it a night, but by 2 a.m. she still wasn't home. At this point, my stomach was in knots. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried not to overreact. Maybe she'd lost track of time. Maybe she had stayed at a friend's place or was just enjoying the night. But why couldn't I shake the feeling that she was lying to me? Around 3 a.m. she finally came in. Her hair was a bit messy and her lipstick was smudged. She looked exhausted, but there was something else in her eyes, a look I couldn't place. It was like she was trying to convince herself that everything was fine. "I'm sorry, babe," she said, kicking off her heels. Lost track of time. I wanted to ask her more, to press for details, but I didn't. I didn't want to sound like I was accusing her. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. So I let it go. But that night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew my mind was starting to question everything. Was it just me? Or had Amanda been acting differently for a while? The next day, I decided to go through some old photos on my phone, trying to clear my mind. But as I was scrolling, something caught my eye. Amanda's phone, left on the counter. It was face down. I had never seen her leave her phone like that. Not unless she was hiding something. I hesitated, but my curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up and unlocked it, my heart pounding. I didn't know what I expected to find, but as I swiped through her messages, one name caught my eye: Eric. I wasn't familiar with this person. I knew her colleagues, her friends, but this name? It was new. There were several messages, most of them innocent enough, but the tone between them was different from what I was used to. They joked and shared private details, things that felt made in nature, but not overtly explicit. Still, something about it didn't sit well with me. Her attempt to hide the phone when I walked into the room earlier, her inability to meet my eyes when I asked her about her night, made sense now. I had been too blind to see it. She was hiding something, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. When she came home that evening, I didn't confront her. Couldn't. Not yet. But when I asked about her night, her reaction was immediate. "You're just being paranoid, Jacob," she said, her voice sharp. "You always think there's something going on." Stung hearing her say that, like she was accusing me of being the problem instead of acknowledging that she had changed. But I said nothing, pretending to believe her. In the days and weeks that followed, I found myself slowly unraveling. The seeds of doubt that had been planted in the back of my mind began to grow, and with every passing day, they seemed to sprout new fears. It wasn't just the late nights or the unfamiliar perfume anymore. It was everything. The subtle changes in Amanda's behavior, her increasingly distant attitude, the way she seemed to pull away from me like I was the last person she wanted to spend time with. Something had shifted between us, and it was no longer a vague feeling. It was a reality that I couldn't ignore. The change was gradual, but it felt like a slow, quiet erosion of what we had built over the years. She became more absorbed in her work, more consumed by her phone, always turning it away from me when I entered the room. I'd find her scrolling through something with a nervous smile, her thumb moving quickly as though trying to hide whatever it was from my eyes. It was becoming harder to ignore. She wasn't physically cheating, at least I didn't think so. But emotionally, she was pulling away in ways I couldn't explain. One day, I suggested we take a weekend getaway, something simple. A couple of days away from the stress of work, just the two of us, to reconnect. She stared at me for a moment, and I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time: hesitation. Then she smiled weakly and shrugged it off. "I'd love to, Jacob, but I just have so much going on with work right now. I don't think it's the best time." I tried not to let it hurt, but I could feel the sting. This wasn't like her. She used to love spontaneous trips. Our weekends used to be filled with hiking, brunches, even simple walks around the park. But now it felt like an afterthought to her. It wasn't just the trip, it was everything. The distance between us was palpable, and it was growing every day. I found myself questioning everything she said. The tiny inconsistencies started to become glaring contradictions. For example, when she came home late, there would be no mention of what she had been doing. In the past, she would have told me every detail, who she was with, where they had gone. But now, when I asked, she simply said, "Oh, just a late meeting with the team." When I tried to ask who else had been there, she would brush me off. "I don't know, just people from the office." She never named names, and it always felt like she was shutting down the conversation before it even began. Her phone was another source of anxiety for me. She used to leave it around the house, never caring much about privacy. But now it was always face down, always with her in another room or hidden in her bag. I never used to care about her phone. I trusted her completely. But now I was becoming obsessed. I found myself checking her social media, scrolling through her Facebook, her Instagram, looking for any signs that would confirm the growing suspicion that had started to creep into my thoughts. But nothing. No obvious red flags, no provocative photos, no cryptic posts. Just the same old selfies and happy pictures with friends. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away from me. I would catch her staring at her phone sometimes, her face lit up by the screen, and when I entered the room, she would quickly lock it and act as though nothing was wrong. My gut told me something was happening behind the scenes, but I didn't know what. I wasn't a jealous person, and I hated that I was becoming the kind of person who would go to such lengths to confirm my fears. But I couldn't help myself. The nagging feeling wouldn't go away. One evening, While Amanda was in the shower, I sat down on the couch and opened her laptop. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but the urge to know the truth was overwhelming. I never expected to find anything incriminating, but I couldn't help myself. I logged into her email account. I had never done something like this before, and I immediately felt guilty. This wasn't me, but I needed answers. I needed to know if I was just overthinking things, if I was imagining problems that didn't exist, or if there was something I should be worried about. The first thing I saw was a string of emails from Eric, the same guy I had seen mentioned in her messages. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly clicked on one of the emails, and as I read it, my stomach churned. There was nothing too explicit, but it was clear that they had been exchanging personal, emotional messages. They talked about things that Amanda had never shared with me. Her frustrations at work, how she felt overwhelmed by the pressure, how she missed the excitement of her early career days. There was an int asterisk Macy in their words that made me feel like an outsider in my own marriage. In one email, Amanda wrote, "I don't know how to explain this to Jacob. I feel like I'm stuck in this life, and I'm not sure I can keep going the way things are. You make me feel seen again. It's been so long since I've felt like that." My heart dropped. She had never said anything like that to me. Sure, we'd had our fair share of disagreements, but this was a completely different level. She was seeking validation from someone else, someone I didn't even know. I closed the laptop quickly, my hands trembling, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? How long had she been pulling away from me, emotionally, before I even noticed? I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. What would I say? How could I even bring this up without sounding paranoid or accusatory? I had no solid proof of anything, just a gut feeling that I was losing her. But the next morning, the suspicion weighed on me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't think straight. Every conversation we had felt like a lie, like I was being kept in the dark about something that I was supposed to be part of. As the days wore on, I started to notice even more signs of Amanda's emotional distance. She was still going out with her colleagues more often, staying out later, and when she came home, she seemed less and less interested in talking to me. It was as if I was invisible to her. She didn't notice the little things I did around the house anymore, didn't comment on the meals I cooked or the effort I put into making her feel loved and appreciated. It felt like we were living parallel lives, walking side by side but never truly connecting. One afternoon, Michael, my best friend, and someone who had known Amanda for years, came over for a beer. We were sitting in the backyard, catching up, when he looked at me with a concerned expression. "Hey man," he started cautiously. "I don't want to intrude, but have you noticed that Amanda's been a little distant lately?" I froze. I hadn't said anything to Michael about what I was feeling, and yet he had noticed it too. My heart sank. If someone else was seeing what I was seeing, then it wasn't just in my head. Something was wrong. "I guess I've noticed," I said quietly, staring into my beer. "She's been different, and I don't know what to do about it." Michael leaned forward, his expression serious. "I'm not saying she's cheating or anything, man, but it's like she's not all in anymore. You might want to have a conversation with her. Maybe she's just going through something." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I had started to realize the truth. I was losing her, and I had no idea how to stop it. The days dragged on after that conversation with Michael, but I couldn't shake the sense of dread that had settled in my chest. It was one thing to suspect something wasn't right. It was another to be on the verge of discovering the truth. I couldn't help but wonder if the answers I was searching for were right in front of me all along, and the thought both terrified and intrigued me. I didn't want to believe that Amanda was hiding something from me, but I was starting to realize I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had been avoiding confronting her directly, partly because I didn't want to seem like the paranoid husband, and partly because I was scared of what I might find if I dug too deep. But as the days passed, my resolve weakened. I couldn't keep living with this knot in my stomach. I needed answers whether I was ready for them or not. One evening, it happened. I was out with a friend at a local bar when I bumped into someone I hadn't expected to see. Stephen, an old friend of mine from college. We exchanged pleasantries, catching up on life, and I didn't think much of it at first. It was just another chance encounter, a random meeting, and I was content to enjoy the brief distraction. But then Steven said something that made my heart stop. "Hey man, I think I saw Amanda here earlier. She was sitting with a guy I didn't recognize." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, she was at the bar with some dude," Steven replied casually. "They seemed pretty cozy, laughing, talking, just enjoying themselves. I didn't want to intrude, but I thought I'd mention it." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had suspected it for a while now, but hearing someone else confirm it was like a jolt of electricity running through me. I tried to keep my composure, but inside, I was unraveling. My mind was spinning, and I felt sick to my stomach. Amanda had been out, sitting with a man I didn't know, and I had no idea how to process what that meant. I excused myself from the conversation, my mind racing with all the thoughts I hadn't allowed myself to entertain before. I thanked Steven for letting me know, but I didn't even stay to finish my drink. I had to go. I had to see it for myself. I had to know if this was just some misunderstanding or if the worst was really happening. I drove to the bar Steven had mentioned, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The air in the car was thick with tension, and my thoughts were a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. What if Steven had misunderstood? What if Amanda was just out with a colleague having a casual drink? But deep down, I knew. I knew this was the moment that would change everything. I parked across the street and waited. I watched the entrance of the bar for what felt like hours, trying to steady my nerves. My heart was pounding, and I could barely catch my breath. I kept telling myself that I had to be calm, that I had to face this head-on. But the idea of confronting Amanda in a situation like this made my stomach turn. I had no idea what I was about to walk into, and then there she was. I saw Amanda standing outside, talking to a man I didn't recognize. They were standing close together, laughing, and the way they interacted, there was something about it that didn't feel right. It wasn't just the casual touch of an elbow or a friendly hug. It was the way they leaned in close, the way their heads tilted toward each other as they whispered and shared private jokes. I could see the look in her eyes. This wasn't just a friendly interaction. This wasn't just two colleagues catching up. This was something else entirely. My heart sank as I watched them. Amanda's smile was too wide, too carefree, and the man beside her was looking at her with an intensity that made me feel sick. I could barely make out his features from where I was sitting, but I didn't need to see his face to know that something was happening that shouldn't be. I felt the weight of my suspicions come crashing down, and it hit me all at once. I had been right all along. I stepped out of the car, my legs shaky beneath me as I crossed the street. I had no plan, no idea how I was going to handle this. I wasn't prepared to see Amanda like this, and I wasn't sure what I was hoping to accomplish by confronting her. But something inside me told me that I had to face the truth. I couldn't keep living in this limbo of suspicion. I needed to know. As I walked closer, I could hear their conversation, but I couldn't make out the words. They were too engrossed in each other to notice me. And then, just as I was about to approach them, Amanda laughed again, her hand brushing against the man's arm in a way that sent a wave of nausea through me. That's when it hit me. I couldn't do this. I couldn't confront her here, not like this. I wasn't ready for this moment. I needed time. I needed space to process what I had just seen. But more than anything, I needed proof. Proof that this wasn't just my imagination running wild. I turned and walked back to my car, my mind reeling. I didn't know what to do next. Should I confront her when she came home? Should I demand the truth right then and there? Or should I gather more evidence, find something solid that couldn't be denied? I decided to do the latter. When I got home, I tried to act normal, but I could barely keep it together. I made myself dinner, and when Amanda walked in, I greeted her with a calm smile, though it felt like a mask I was forcing myself to wear. She didn't notice anything different, and I didn't give her a reason to. I spent the rest of the evening distracted, constantly thinking about what I had seen. I couldn't get the image of her laughing with that man out of my head. I didn't know who he was, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that something was happening behind my back, and it had been going on for a while. That night, as Amanda went to bed, I decided to check her phone. I had never done this before, but in that moment, it felt like the only option. I had to know the truth even if it meant hurting myself more. I found her phone lying on the nightstand and I picked it up without hesitation. I opened her messages and there it was, exactly what I had feared. Dozens of texts between Amanda and the man I had seen her with at the bar. His name was Eric. They had been exchanging messages for weeks and the tone was in asterisk mate, flirtatious even. In one message, Amanda wrote, "I can't stop thinking about you. Every time we're apart, it feels like a part of me is missing." I could feel my heart break as I read the words. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know that my worst fears had come true. But the truth was undeniable now. My wife had been having an affair. The next few days after my discovery were a blur of emotions. Anger, sadness, confusion. It was as if my mind couldn't settle on one feeling long enough to make sense of what had happened. I had found the proof I needed, and yet the reality of it was harder to grasp than I had ever imagined. My wife, my partner, my best friend had been hiding something from me for God knows how long. And now that I knew the truth, the weight of it threatened to crush me. I spent the next couple of nights in a state of restless turmoil. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, my mind racing through every detail of what I had learned. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Everything felt wrong. Every time I looked at Amanda, I saw her differently. She was still the woman I had shared my life with, but now she felt like a stranger, someone who had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I tried to act normal when she was around, but I could tell that she felt the shift too. There was an awkwardness between us, like we were both aware of the elephant in the room but didn't know how to address it. She would talk to me, but there was a certain distance in her voice, a certain coldness that hadn't been there before. I wanted to confront her, I wanted to scream at her, demand answers. But every time I thought about it, I froze. Part of me was terrified of what she might say, and another part of me wanted to find a way to make things work, to make this go away and pretend everything was fine. But I knew that wasn't the way forward. I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't know. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, in this state of emotional paralysis. The truth had come crashing down on me, and now I had to face it, no matter how much it hurt. One evening, after Amanda had gone to bed, I stood in the living room, staring at the walls that had once felt so familiar, so comforting. It was the same room we had spent so many nights in together, laughing, talking, watching TV, and making plans for the future. But now it felt like a prison. I had to get away from it all. I needed space to think, to clear my head, to figure out what I was going to do. The next morning, I packed a bag and headed out the door without saying a word to Amanda. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just knew I needed to get away, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of our home, even if it was only for a little while. I drove for hours, winding my way through the countryside until I found myself in the mountains, far away from everything I had known. I rented a small cabin and spent the next couple of days alone, walking in the woods, breathing in the crisp, clean air, and letting the solitude wash over me. Being alone in nature gave me a strange sense of clarity. In the quiet of the mountains, I finally had the space to think about everything that had happened. I realized that I had been living in denial for too long. I had ignored the signs, made excuses for Amanda, and convinced myself that everything was fine when I knew deep down that it wasn't. But now, the truth was staring me in the face, and I had no choice but to confront it. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I didn't want to be in a marriage where trust had been broken so completely. I didn't want to live in a lie. I didn't want to keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. I had spent too many years trying to make things work, trying to hold on to a relationship that had already started to fall apart. I didn't know if Amanda's affair had been a one-time mistake or if it had been going on for months, but either way, the damage had been done. The more I thought about the life I wanted, the more I realized that I couldn't move forward with Amanda. I had to let go. I had to make a decision, and it had to be final. I couldn't keep living in a toxic relationship, clinging to something that wasn't real anymore. I needed to break free. I needed to take control of my life again. When I finally returned home, I knew what I had to do. The first thing I did was grab my phone and call a lawyer. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew that I needed legal advice. I needed to know what my options were and what the process would look like. The lawyer was professional and calm, asking me all the right questions and helping me understand the legal side of things. By the time we finished the call, I had a plan in place. I would file for divorce. The thought of it was both terrifying and liberating. Part of me felt like I was tearing apart everything I had worked for, everything I had built with Amanda. But another part of me knew that this was the only way forward. I had to reclaim my life, my happiness, and my peace of mind. I couldn't let Amanda's betrayal define me anymore. That night when Amanda came home, I didn't know how to start the conversation. I didn't know what words would come out of my mouth, but I knew it had to happen. As soon as she walked through the door, I knew something was different in the air. She must have sensed it too. There was no small talk, no pleasantries. We just stood there, facing each other in silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I spoke. "Amanda, we need to talk." She looked at me, her eyes filled with apprehension. "What about?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "About us. About everything. About the lies. About the affair." Her face went pale, and I saw the guilt flash across her features, but she didn't say anything. She didn't even try to deny it. She just stood there, staring at the floor, her hands trembling slightly. "I know everything," I continued, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "I know about you and Eric. I know you've been lying to me. I saw the messages. I saw the proof." Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. But she didn't. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, silently looking at me with eyes full of regret. "I don't want to be in this anymore, Amanda," I said, the words feeling like they came from somewhere deep within me, somewhere I hadn't allowed myself to go for months. "I can't live like this. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when I know it's not." Her face crumpled as she sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face. "Jacob, please," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. But I wasn't listening anymore." The truth had already been laid bare, and I couldn't ignore it. "I've made up my mind, Amanda," I said, my voice finally breaking. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I want a divorce. I couldn't believe I had said it out loud, but there was no turning back now. It was the right decision, and I knew it. As the words left my mouth, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. I had been dreading this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, it felt almost necessary. Amanda was sitting across from me, her face pale, her eyes swollen with tears. She had barely said anything since I first spoke. She sat there, trembling, looking like she was trying to process the gravity of what I had just said. I wanted to feel pity for her. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, but I couldn't. I couldn't pretend anymore. The trust had been shattered beyond repair. She had broken something deep inside me, and I knew that I could never put it back together. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was suffocating. It was like we were both waiting for the other to break, to say something, anything that might change the course of this moment. But I knew that there was nothing either of us could say. The damage had already been done. Finally, Amanda spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jacob, please. I know I've hurt you, but this isn't what I wanted. I never wanted to destroy us." Her eyes were filled with tears now, her voice breaking. "I don't know what happened. I was just so lost. I felt like you weren't there for me anymore, and I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Please, I'm begging you, don't do this." Her words were laced with desperation, but they didn't move me anymore. I had heard it all before. The apologies, the promises that things would change, the pleas for another chance. But it was too late. The trust was gone, and with it, any hope I had for our future. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure even as her tear-filled eyes pierced into me. "Amanda," I began, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "I don't know when everything changed. I don't know when I stopped being enough for you. But somewhere along the way, I lost you. And that's something I can't fix. I can't keep living in a relationship where I'm constantly questioning everything." She sobbed, wiping her tears away with the back of her hand. "I'm so sorry, Jacob. I never meant for this to happen. I swear I never wanted to hurt you." "I know you didn't want to hurt me," I said, my voice softer now, but still resolute. "But the thing is, you did. And I can't keep living in a lie. I don't deserve this. You don't deserve this either, but I can't stay in a relationship that isn't honest. I need to move on." The finality of those words was like a knife to the chest. As much as I had been prepared for this moment, as much as I knew it was the right decision, it still hurt. It hurt to see her like this, to see the woman I had once loved so deeply reduced to a shadow of herself, pleading for something that was no longer possible. Amanda's sobs grew louder as she reached for my hand. I could feel the warmth of her touch, but it no longer felt comforting. It felt like a reminder of everything we had lost. "Jacob, please," she pleaded. "I love you. I made a mistake, but I'm willing to do anything to fix this. Please don't give up on us. I'll go to therapy, I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't lose you." I pulled my hand away gently, the motion simple but final. "Amanda, you had your chances. I gave you everything I could. But you chose someone else. You chose to betray me. And no amount of therapy or apologies can fix that. I've made my decision. Her face crumpled and she buried her face in her hands, her body racked with sobs. "Please, Jacob," she cried. "Please don't do this. We can work through this. I promise I'll change. I'll prove to you that I'm sorry." "I don't want your promises, Amanda," I said quietly. "I need more than that. I need trust. And you've destroyed that." I stood up from the couch, feeling a sense of exhaustion wash over me. The weight of everything was finally starting to settle in, and I realized just how much of myself I had given to this marriage. And now it was time to take it back. It was time to reclaim my life, my happiness, my peace of mind. "I'm going to file for divorce," I said, my voice steady. "And I'm done. I don't know what happens next, but I can't keep living like this. We're done, Amanda." "I'm sorry." She didn't respond. She didn't try to stop me. She just sat there, crying, her face hidden behind her hands. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about Amanda. This wasn't just about the affair or the lies. It was about me. It was about my future, my well-being, and my ability to move on. And I knew that no matter how much it hurt, I couldn't let this define me anymore. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and a lot of painful conversations. Amanda and I barely spoke. There was nothing left to say. She had tried to convince me to give her another chance, but I couldn't. The relationship we had was gone. And as much as it hurt, I knew it was the right thing to do. I moved out of the house shortly after. I found a small apartment in the city, a place of my own where I could start fresh. The transition wasn't easy. The apartment felt empty and cold at first, and every corner reminded me of the life I had shared with Amanda. But slowly, over time, I began to fill it with things that made me happy. I reconnected with friends I had neglected over the years, spent more time doing the things I loved, and started to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. There were still days when the pain of the breakup hit me like a wave, when I missed the life we had built together and the love we once shared. But with each passing day, I felt stronger. I felt more like myself again. And that in itself was worth everything I had gone through. The first few weeks after moving into the apartment were the hardest. It was a strange feeling being in a space that was completely mine but still feeling the absence of Amanda. The apartment was small, just a one-bedroom unit with a decent view of the city skyline, but it was mine. It didn't have the clutter of our shared life, and that was both comforting and painful. The silence was deafening at times. I had become so accustomed to Amanda's presence, to the way we moved through the world together. But now I was completely alone. I threw myself into work, finding distractions wherever I could. But even in the busy moments, my mind kept returning to what I had lost. There were nights when I would sit on the couch, staring at the walls, wondering if I'd made the right choice. The pain of losing Amanda was still fresh. The love I had for her hadn't disappeared just because I wanted it to. But with every passing day, I started to realize something important. I was starting to find myself again. The first change came when I decided to reconnect with old friends. People I had distanced myself from over the years while I was so focused on my marriage. I reached out to Tom, an old buddy from college, and we set up a dinner. It was a simple night, just the two of us at a diner, catching up on life. It felt good. I hadn't realized how much I missed having these conversations, just talking about random things, laughing about old memories, and being reminded of who I used to be before everything became about Amanda and our relationship. I also started revisiting old hobbies that had been pushed aside. I took up painting again, something I hadn't done in years, and spent weekends at the local art gallery. I began to take better care of myself, both physically and mentally. I joined a gym, even though it felt awkward at first. The first time I stepped onto the treadmill, I was overwhelmed by the sense of change. But as the days went on, I started to feel better, stronger. It was a subtle but important reminder that I was reclaiming my life, step by step. I didn't feel completely healed, but there were moments, fleeting and small, where I caught a glimpse of who I was becoming, someone who could be independent, someone who could be happy without depending on another person to validate him. About 3 months after moving into my new apartment, I met Claire. It wasn't an explosive meeting. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It started with something simple, just a passing conversation at a coffee shop. She worked at a local art gallery, and I had been going there on weekends, looking at the exhibits and losing myself in the artwork. I'd seen her a few times quietly talking with other patrons, but I'd never spoken to her until one Sunday morning when she offered me a coffee on the house. It felt like the universe was giving me a small, gentle nudge. We talked for a while that day. She was easy to talk to, someone who understood the small, everyday struggles of life. There was a lightness to our conversation that I hadn't felt in a long time, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was talking to someone who wasn't burdened by the past. Claire didn't know about my failed marriage, didn't know the hurt I had carried with me, and in some ways, that made her the perfect person to talk to. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing each other more. We met for coffee regularly, and then once or twice, we went out for dinner. There was no pressure, no rush. We took things slowly, and it felt like a natural progression. The more we talked, the more I realized that I was starting to feel something new. It wasn't love yet, but it was the beginning of something important. I was starting to enjoy life again, starting to find joy in the simple moments. Claire made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in a long time. She listened to me without judgment, without any hidden motives. She was genuinely kind, and in her presence I felt a sense of hope, a hope that had been missing from my life for months. I wasn't thinking about the past with Amanda as much. I wasn't comparing Claire to anyone. She was just herself, and that was more than enough. One evening, as we walked through a park near my apartment, Claire turned to me and asked, "What are you looking for now, Jacob?" I paused for a moment, the question catching me off guard. What was I looking for? I had spent so much time focusing on the pain of the past, on the betrayal, that I hadn't even stopped to think about what I wanted in the future. But as I stood there, looking at the lights of the city in the distance, something inside me clicked. "I'm looking for peace," I said, my voice steady. "I'm looking for happiness, for something that doesn't feel like a burden. I want to live again." She smiled softly, her hand brushing against mine. "You deserve that," she said. "We all do." And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to live again, to find joy in things that once felt impossible. The past wasn't gone, and the scars from my marriage with Amanda would always be there. But they weren't my whole story anymore. I was ready to write a new chapter, one where I wasn't defined by betrayal and heartbreak, but by the strength it had taken to move on. Claire and I continued to grow closer. We were taking it slow, but it was different this time. It felt real. And while I wasn't sure where it would lead, I was excited to find out. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. I had learned so much from the pain of my past, and I was beginning to see the possibilities in front of me. The scars were still there, but they were no longer the things that defined me. I was moving forward one step at a time, and that was enough.